Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm Nancy Nouse, CFP, and the owner of Benchmark Wealth Management. And today you have a treat. Well, not because I'm here, but more because Shannon Acosta is here. Shannon also is a CFP and is, how would I say this, one of the brightest and most entertaining advisors we have. So we're going to have some fun today, and we're going to talk about college education, college funding, etc. So we know that's why you're here today, and we look forward to filling you in as much as we can, knowing that we're always open for questions. So Shannon, why don't you lead us off here?
Yeah, well, I know this is a really hot topic. I have two children of my own, and I'm constantly gathering and refining information on the subject because it's relevant to me. So the first thing that's kind of on my radar, since my kiddos are young, is the fact that college tuition grows pretty quickly. And I went back and looked at a few stats since 40 years ago. So what would that be? Oh, 1980. Yeah, thank you.
Hey, math. Good job.
It's not great up here. I can work a calculator like a champ, but since 1980 or so, the average cost of tuition has increased by about 150%. Honestly, that's a little bit less than I thought it might be over that long of a time frame, but still, that's pretty significant. And to give you a comparison, normal average is about 3 to 5% every year. And if you compare that with the CPI or other inflation measures, those are usually hovering in the 1 to 2% range. So it is increasing, and it is increasing more than other costs are. Private schools tend to increase more. In-state public schools tend to increase less, although they're still following the same trajectory. Briefly, if you were to go to an in-state school, you could expect to spend about $20,000 a year. If you're out of state at a public school, that's closer to $47,000. If you're going to a private school, then you're looking at about $50,000. So out of state and private are roughly the same. Of all of those, you can expect to spend between $15,000 and $20,000 on room and board and on other ancillary things. So the tuition costs represent not, just a fraction of the amount that I just quoted to you. And oddly enough, starting in 2020, the increase was lower than it had been in the years past. And a lot of that researchers think might have something to do with the college's response to the coronavirus and pandemic and people's discretionary income tightening a little bit. So we did see a little bit of a response during that time frame. We'll see whether or not that sustains itself. So I think that covers costs and how quickly they're increasing. When do you start saving for education? Nancy, can you talk about that a little?
Yeah, great question, Shannon, and you and I get that question quite a bit. I think the question before the question is, should you be saving money for your college, for your kids' college education? And it's a fascinating psychological study that Shannon and I get to do almost on a daily basis, that the parents whose colleges were funded totally by their parents sometimes feel like the kids need to work a little bit more for it because it was too easy for me. Or go to the other extreme, I not only want to pay for college, but I want to pay for graduate school. I want to do anything I can to help the kids. And so what's the right answer? There's not one. It's what's best for you and your family. We feel like it's good for kids to have some skin in the game, but like Shannon just went through and talked about the amounts, it's just a ton of money. So number one, are your kids headed toward college? And I got to say, some of the smartest people I know, in fact, if I had an advisory board, one of the guys on my advisory board got out of high school and that was it. He never went to college. So college is great. I think for my benefit, it was more the socialization of college that really helped me, and beginning to be away from mom and dad and be independent and be not in the same city. That was a benefit of college, but it's not for everybody. And oh yeah, we love to say college is a privilege. And so, the attitude of I deserve this or you should pay for this needs to be nipped in the bud. And I'm sure your kids are not doing that, but we certainly can walk you through and give you some talking points if that's the case. So let's say that you've decided all that sounds great, and I do want to save for college for my kids. So wonderful. When do you start? Well, you need to put on your own oxygen mask first. meaning we feel very strongly that you need to walk through Dave Ramsey's baby steps. And that is, do you have adequate money in an emergency fund? Have you paid off all of your consumer debt? Are you putting money away for your retirement? Then we start talking about kids' college. Well, why would you do kids' college before retirement? Well, retirement's a considerably bigger nut to crack. It's for your benefit, and we want to make sure that you're taken care of before you start taking care of the kids. And I don't want your children to work their way through college or have to borrow money for school, but you can do that. You cannot work your way through retirement because, oh yeah, that's right, it's retirement. And you can't borrow money for retirement. So that's why we put them in that order. So we want to make sure that you're taken care of first. It's tempting to try to do all this at the same time. I'm going to save, I'm going to pay off debt, I'm going to put money in retirement, I'm going to do college education. We feel like you need to do one thing at a time and really get baby steps number 1 through 4 under your belt before you start really focusing in on kids' education. And that may take you some time, and that's okay. That's okay. Because remember, your children can work their way through college. I certainly did to a certain extent. Shannon did too. And look how fabulous we turned out. So it can really be beneficial. The other question we get quite a bit is, how should I be saving for college, and what strategies do I use to determine how much money? Well, I've got a couple of rules here. Number 1 is the 2,000 rule. And that's based on a goal of saving half of tuition. You take the amount, $2,000, and you multiply it. Hello. You multiply it times your child's age. So for example, your child is 10 years old, 2,000 times 10 is 20,000. And that's going to help you start getting a focus on paying basically for half of an in-state state school. So that's kind of where we're going for that. And that's how much you would need to get in an account to really get to your goal of ultimately paying for half of your child's education. This assumes that you're in a tax advantaged account, like we're going to talk about in just a little bit, and it's super simple. So it may not be perfect math. And given what Shannon just said, I think what we're talking about is 2,000 times your child's age times 4, because I think you might need that much per year. The other idea is to do a third, a third, a third, and that meaning that it's the rule of thirds. You're going to save a third, you're going to prepay for college, you're going to invest that money in ways that we're going to talk about just a little bit. When your child is in school, you're going to cash flow a third. And then the other third is you're going to get creative. And that is, you're going to encourage your child to get a job in high school or through college, and it's their responsibility to pay for this. And we can't encourage that enough. We've just seen great benefit, both of us and all the clients we work with, of children having skin in the game, because college is expensive and they need to start taking ownership as soon as possible. So those are just some rules of thumb that might help you. Shannon, I referred to tax advantaged accounts, and you and I both know that 529s are our favorite. So let's walk through that together maybe?
Yeah, and get ready. We're about to throw a lot of information at you. So if you need to, take a sip of water or pull out your notepad, or if just bear with me. This is fact time. And I want to circle back quickly to what Nancy said about working your way through college. Y'all, I gotta say, that is probably one of the most proud things that I have to take with me from my college education. Very few of my peers had jobs in college, and it made a world of difference in my own work ethic. And I have a great relationship with my parents. I didn't think twice about their treatment of me, the fact that I had to work. In fact, I was eager to. So,
and Shannon, I want to add to that. It gave me a much deeper appreciation for my mom and dad, because it was hard. Frankly, it was hard juggling working and going to school. But interestingly enough, I didn't have to work freshman, sophomore, or junior, but I did my senior year, and I had the best grades that I had the entire time, which, taught me time management. And I think it was really, really beneficial. So great point. And I know we kind of chased a rabbit, but I think that's really important stuff.
Yeah, well, we just feel so strongly about it. But there's a little bit of a stigma attached to it.
True.
529 plans. What are they, and how do you get in on them? Well, the 529 is just the numerical codification that the IRS applied to an account in which you save for college. The 529 in and of itself means nothing. It's just kind of where it is in the list of items in the tax code. It's a savings plan that you can put money into to save for college, and it offers some tax benefits, but there are some restrictions as well that we'll talk about in a little bit. You can use it not only for college costs, but as of 2018, they expanded it. You can use 529s to pay for K through 12 private school tuition too. Not something that we necessarily suggest, because one of the big benefits of 529s are the long-term compound interest that the investments have to offer, but it's nice that it's available. And there are two big, broad types of 529 plans. We will specifically be focusing on the 529 savings plan, but you might also hear about 529 prepaid plans. A prepaid tuition plan is one in which you go to the state of Tennessee. Actually, I don't even know if Tennessee has one or not, but
I know Mississippi does, but I'm not sure about Tennessee.
Okay, well, let's use Mississippi then, because we're all familiar with that one. You go to the state of Mississippi and you say, I'm going to prepay little Susie Jane, and I'm going to prepay tuition for her today when the cost is lower, so that she can go and have everything taken care of by the time she's ready to go there. I know nothing about college sports or mascot, so I'm not even going to try and assign a label to that. You're welcome. But we don't recommend that as much, just because it's kind of constricting. What if Susie Jane doesn't want to go to Mississippi? What if she wants to go to, UT? So we're going to talk about the 529 savings plan. And what you do there is you can put money in it, you invest in mutual funds, and the money grows tax-free as long as you use it on college expenses, which we'll talk about here in just a moment. More than 6,000 colleges and universities and more than 400 foreign colleges and universities will accept money from a 529 plan. That pretty much covers all of your bases. I've never heard of one that will deny credit from there. Most plans have a minimum contribution limit. Just logistically, we usually suggest no less than $1,000 to open and fund a 529. But from there, you're not required to put money into it. We have clients a lot of times that will add during Christmas time or birthdays. Grandparents can deposit money into it as well, and it can sort of become a collecting pot for money that you have extra that you'd like to give to your child, but you want it to go toward a specific purpose. You can always set up monthly contributions too. A lot of clients do that. You have control over the 529 plan. You parent. The child will never gain access. Susie Jane can never get her fingers on the money. And so what ends up happening is that if she doesn't go to college, or she gets scholarships, or she does nothing beyond high school that would incur any cost, you get to decide what to do with the money, whether it's to transfer it to somebody else in your family or to use it yourself. And that's pretty powerful, because I don't know what you were like when you were 18, but I was not capable of financial responsibility. And if somebody would have handed me $50,000 and said, go do what you want, I probably wouldn't be standing here today. It would have gotten me into trouble. So that's a huge benefit of the 529, is that you have control. Now, only one adult at a time can be the legal owner. It's usually one parent or the other. Some grandparents will do this for their grandchildren. In a minute, we'll talk about how that might not be as advantageous. The other parent, we usually designate as a successor owner in case something should happen to the primary. So you're both involved in it, but for legal purposes, only one adult is assigned at a time. Everyone's eligible. There are no income limits. The only contribution limit is the annual gifting limit of $15,000. There's some wonky exceptions to that. And if you have questions, or if you do want to add more than $15,000 to a child's plan in a year, just talk to one of us and we can let you know what that looks like. The other type of savings vehicle for college is a UTMA or a UGMA. These stand for Uniform Transfer to Minors Act. We don't necessarily recommend these for college specific, because there's not a tax benefit. And at some point, the child will gain control of the money. But they have their place If you want to know more about them, again, just let one of us know and we can tell you what you might want to use one of those for. Finally, the tax benefit of a 529, as I briefly mentioned, is that it grows tax-free as long as you use it for education. So if you deposit $10,000 and it eventually turns into $20,000, you're never going to pay taxes on that $10,000 worth of growth, so long as you use it appropriately. Furthermore, if you live in a state that applies state income taxes, you might be able to deduct your 529 contributions against your state income tax. Arkansas and 6 other states, but don't ask me which ones, will let you deduct 529 contributions regardless of where the plan is held. Most states, like Mississippi, will only let you deduct contributions if the plan is held and sponsored in Mississippi. If you've got questions about that, come ask us, because it can get kind of, detailed and meticulous, but there could be a tax benefit today if you live in a state with state income tax. And then, really quickly, because I know you guys want me to stop talking and you want Nancy to pick it back up again.
No, they're fine, really.
The definition of college expenses is pretty broad. A lot of clients want to know, what if my child doesn't go to college? Or what if they get scholarships? Well, I'm going to just tear through a list really quickly of everything it includes, and it's not all encompassing, and the laws change regularly. So you have to check with your CPA and you have to keep receipts, but keep your receipts, because even if you pay for something out of pocket, you can reimburse yourself later and take advantage of the tax-free growth. So tuition, obvious, room and board. You can do textbooks, fees, supplies, any equipment that you need for enrollment, special needs services, enrollment in a study abroad program, computers, internet access. And if you or your child is planning to live off campus, you can even use your 529 money to pay for living off campus. You have to be a little more detailed in your record keeping, and there's only so much that you can take out, and it has to do with how much the child's university would charge you to live on campus. But your student's not limited to living on campus if you want to use 529 to reimburse for it. What won't it cover? Well, as of right now, it doesn't include travel. So if you want to go travel to see your child or bring your child home, you cannot take money out of a 529. Or if they want to go study abroad, the abroad program is covered, but the plane ticket to get from here to Spain is not. Nancy, can you think of anything else that I didn't mention as far as?
No, the only other thing, well, actually, yes, the only other thing I thought of, Shannon, was we've been talking about college, but really you can use a 529 for higher education. Is that,
Thank you.
So anything that's after post senior year of high school. So if your child wants to go to plumbing school or electrician school, God bless them, and be sure I get their name and number. That's also something that you can apply the 529 toward. So
I'm
yeah,
so glad you said that.
Okay, cool. Well, let me jump in, and again, Shannon, if there's something I miss, one of the things that originally with 529s, mutual fund and investment companies partnered with different states. And so one of the questions we get quite a bit is, do I have to invest in the investment company that's aligned with my state? And the answer to that is no. In other words, well, first of all, Tennessee doesn't even have one. Mississippi does. I think Arkansas does, but I'm not sure. And any of these things that we say we're not sure about, we're a librarian, not a library, so we can find the information out. If you've got questions, you email us, we'll find you the answer, but I shockingly don't know everything off the cuff. So in my example, do I have to pick a state, and how's the investment work? We have a lot of clients that live in Tennessee, invest in a 529 in Virginia, and send their kids to Mississippi, Arkansas, and Florida. So everything's interchangeable. What you want to pay attention to is, if you reside in a state that has an investment attached to that state for 529s, is it tax deductible for you? What Shannon's described is that the 529 grows tax-free. In some states, if you use a certain investment group, it's also tax deductible. That's a great thing, and I think Mississippi has one. The negative to that is sometimes the performance is subpar. And so you want to compare the performance of whatever to that and make sure that tax deductible is not all that great if all you're getting is a 2% return. So you just, again, you want to drill down. Shockingly, we can help you with that. So if you want some help, you let us know. We're going to guess that your kid is going to get a scholarship. And so if the scholarship happens, then what do I do with the 529? Well, first of all, I hope that works out. Secondly, most of the clients that we work with whose children have gotten academic or athletic scholarship have gotten, even if you get a full ride, there's always something else to pay for. So the scholarship might not cover a computer, for example. So some of those withdrawals can be made and you can take it from the 529. But if your child gets a $15,000 track scholarship to Arkansas State, let's say, you can withdraw $15,000 from that 529 tax-free. So it's a sweet deal, and you can use it for whatever you want it to, whatever you want to. Yeah, okay, got it. We said we were good at 529s, not necessarily speech. Okay, next up, and this has happened many times for us as well. What happens to the funds in a 529 if junior decides not to go to college, or if, what's more common, if my child doesn't need all the money that we've saved for him or her? That's a great, great question. First of all, or as Shannon pointed out, if I decide not to give the money to my child because they turn out to be a nuthead. All those are options. And let me take that one first. If for whatever reason your child doesn't go to college, or you decide not to give the money to the kid, you can pull all that money out anytime you want to with a 10% penalty. You're going to pay tax on the growth, and there's a 10% penalty. So that's to be considered depending on how much money is in there. But before you do that, if that was your oldest child who didn't go to school or turned out to be a nuthead, do you have other children that you can gift that money to? Because that's an option. So you've got $100,000 in the 529, your oldest child doesn't go or doesn't need it, or you don't want to give it, but you've got two younger children. Those children can receive the gift from you because you're the owner. Remember, just like Shannon said, it's not your child, it's you. So you have control of the money. Likewise, if you or your spouse want to go back and take some graduate courses at University of Memphis or wherever, you can pay for that out of that 529. So it's within that family, it can be used. So it's really, it's a very liberal plan and can be fantastic for your use. The other thing is what's in the account has to be used by the time that your child is 30. So if you feel like your child initially is not going to go to college, but after 2 years in Europe might want to go, then just hang on to it, because we have until they're 30. And if they decide to take a pottery class or whatever when they get back, we can pay for that out of the 529. I'm using those stories because I'm thinking of my sisters. Okay, moving on. I hope they don't watch this. All right, let's see. We can transfer to another beneficiary. Again, I kind of touched on that a little bit, a qualifying family member. So if you have money in there, again, it can be gifted to your spouse to go back to college for graduate degree, or you decide you want to go to nursing school or whatever. All that's an option, and it's pretty liberal. It's son, daughter, stepson, stepdaughter, father-in-law, mother-in-law, aunts, uncles. I mean, the list goes on. So again, we can help you with that. Actually, we have this really easy to understand drawing that I won't share with you. And Shannon said, don't go over that with him. I'm like, good idea. Okay, good idea. Let's see, where are we? I think, strategically, another thing that people use the 529 for is estate planning. I do not have children, but I have a great niece and great nephew. So shortly after they were born, I set up a 529, and I'm putting a lot of money in it because it's a great tax shelter for me. They're puppies now, they're 2 and 4. So I have 28 and 26 years for this money to grow. Well, I'm not going to give my age, but I'll be a super codger by the time they're 30. And I've had all this time for all this money to grow. And there's a chance I might be in heaven by the time the 30 years is up. So that being the case, hey, we just scored a big one, and there's a lot of money in there. So it can be used for estate planning purposes as well. Let's see. Shannon, we get some questions periodically about financial aid. So can you touch on that and how a 529 might be affected by financial aid as well?
Yeah, and this is kind of another whopper full of some detail. So I'll try and be as concise and short as possible. But before getting into that, Nancy, I learned about kind of an exciting update with the 529s the other day. The age 30 restriction's been lifted.
You're kidding, really?
You do not have to use the money by the time your child's 30. You can, say that I have two daughters. I'm pretty sure one's going to college. She'll probably get a full ride. The other, the jury's still out. So I can always take hers and just hang on to it for her children if she has them. No, that could change. Laws change all the time.
But yeah, that's great news. Okay, good.
That's good news for a webinar.
Yes, very.
Okay, 529 and financial aid. Any college with a financial aid application process will ask you to put 529 assets down. And when you're filling out the FAFSA form, what does that stand for? Free application for federal student aid. It wants to make sure that your child qualifies to get government assistance. And this is need-based. So the amount that your child could receive will decrease as your assets and as the child's assets increase. Remember how we said, and Nancy emphasized this in a great way, the 529 assets are yours. They never belong to your child. And not only is that great to curb temptation for the child, but it's great on your FAFSA form as well. Any assets that are yours, the parents, as opposed to the child's, will be considered at a much lower degree than your child's assets. So let's say that you have 10,000, that's a bad example. Let's say you have 25,000 and your child's 529. Well, you get a $20,000 exemption. So as you put your balance down in the FAFSA form, that first 20,000 falls under the asset protection allowance. It's not even going to be considered. That 5,000 difference will only be considered to a 5%, or maybe it's a 5.64 to be specific. I'm defying my promise to be general and not going into too much detail. So there you go, 5.64%. Couldn't just round up or down on that one. But that $5,000 delta will be looked at just at a 5.64% ratio. I just can't do it. I can't not say the whole thing. So let's say, on the other hand, that your kid has that 25,000 and a UTMA. It's under his or her own name. First of all, that exclusion doesn't apply. And second of all, it's going to be looked at 20%. So it's going to reduce your child's financial aid by whatever that math is, 20% of $25,000, $5,000. It could reduce their financial aid. So in general, 529 plans are going to affect financial aid to a much lower degree. Grandparents are not included on the financial aid. So if you have a grandchild and you want to have a 529 for him or her, the assets won't be included. But keep in mind that if you ever use money to cover tuition from your 529 and you're a grandparent, it'll show up as income to your grandchild. And that can offset financial aid by up to 50%. So it's a double-edged sword. Some strategies around that are to wait until the last 2 years of a child's education, because the FAFSA takes income from previous years into consideration. In other words, income that they had when they were freshman, sophomore is going to be considered for their junior and senior FAFSA. Therefore, if you transfer money to your grandchild when they're juniors or seniors, it might not have as much of a damning effect. I think that's about as technical as you want me to get about financial aid and 529 plans. So Nancy, we've covered so much, and we really appreciate you all bearing with us and listening. And how would you wrap us up, Nancy? Yeah,
thanks, Shannon. I think there's just a couple things. Our last question, let me just read it to you. If I could do just one thing today to benefit my child when they pursue higher education, what would that be? Well, one thing. Well, I think the most important thing you can do is teach them the baby steps that you have learned. And that is to really save money, don't get into debt. If you have debt, pay it off. But also, I think as it relates to our topic, to really determine what your motivation is. and everybody has a different college or not college experience. Mine was watching my mother drive away when she dropped me off at UT in Knoxville and thinking, well, when did we decide this? Now, I'm not faulting my parents. We were just college material, and it was always understood that I would go to college, and I went on a bunch of college visits, and we never really processed, what am I doing in college? You know, I mean, those of you who know me, my dad wanted me to major in computer science. Well, that would have been a debacle. And I wanted to major in social work, and that would have been a debacle too. So I think really to engage in conversations and talk about what your motivation is in going to college. And we have an awful lot of parents that all but kill themselves to send their children to a private out-of-state college so that those children can come back and teach school. Now, there's nothing more important than teachers in the classroom. I kid you not. But to pay $250,000 for a child to get an education degree when University of Memphis is in the city and in the state, and about a fifth of that cost, I just think, what's your motivation? Is it, well, I want my kid to go to X school because that's cooler? Well, and you're going to be paying that for 30 years because there's no way to do that in most cases without loans. So I really think to process your motivation, to talk to your kid about, what does college mean? What did it mean to you? Or why did you not go? And why are you glad you didn't go? Or why did you wish you did go? You know, to just have that conversation, I think is really, really important. I think getting help, talking with your financial advisor, one of us, or we've got 3 other great advisors here, so any of those folks can help you, but to really process some of the things that you're thinking about. And then how did you get through college? Did you have skin in the game? Did somebody pay for all of it? We've said earlier, the best thing that ever happened was that we both had to work through college. My parents never bought me a car. I bought my first car, and they didn't pay for all of college. And those 2 lessons were 2 of the hardest I learned because they were financial lessons, and 2 of the best I learned. And I wasn't happy about it at the time, but childhood is not supposed to be, you know, puppies and rainbows all the time. So said Nancy, not having any children of her own. Anyway, we wanted to whet your appetite for 529s and college funding. We wanted to give you as much information as we could. And I'll bet there's a 5.64% chance that you might have a question after all this. So if
just say 6%, Nancy,
feel free to call us or email us and let us know. We love financial foundations. We love teaching these courses, and we hope you find it helpful. Thanks, Shannon, for your input. Thanks from me, and we hope to see you the next time.